So ahead of Godzilla vs Kong's release date, I put a poll out asking which movie you wanted me to compare it to, and to my surprise, the results were overwhelmingly the original King Kong vs Godzilla from 1962. So, alright then, you asked for it and you're gonna get it. It's time to compare Godzilla vs Kong to King Kong vs Godzilla. Let the battle commence. The story for King Kong vs Godzilla is that a head of a TV network sends two men to Faroe Island to capture Kong so they can use him to boost their ratings. As they are in the process of transporting him, however, King Kong wakes up and breaks free. And somewhere in the middle of all this, Godzilla gets loose as well and breaks out of an iceberg. And now the city has two monsters loose and they need to find a way to take them down. And what better way than to get the two monsters to face off against each other? And the story for Godzilla vs Kong is just a bunch of stuff happening as a means to get to the monster fights. Yeah, this story has a lot of cool elements, but it is just a mess of ideas that don't form a cohesive narrative. And I didn't think I would say this, but very early on, I realized that this movie needed to be longer. Because of its short runtime of 1 hour and 53 minutes, including credits, the movie does feel like it's in a rush to get from one scene to the next at times, and the details are very unclear. And I think this could have been easily rectified if they made the movie just a little longer. And there was honestly a lot of the movie that I didn't even understand, one of which being the super futuristic technology that the world has only a few years after the previous Godzilla film. The only things that were comprehensible to me was Godzilla's motivation, Kong's motivation, Mechagodzilla's story, and the relationship between Kong, the little girl, and the mother. I really didn't care about anything else that was going on, and honestly, I feel like the movie didn't care either because it does a very rushed job at explaining these parts, and this does make the story and the characters much less interesting and investing. And I do think that they should have spent a little bit more time making those things clearer so I was fully on board with this journey, like I was with King of the Monsters for example. But as it stands, I just didn't care about the journey. I just wanted them to cut to the destination. Also, they tried to give you a reason as to why Godzilla is playing up and killing people, but I don't buy it. He was just causing trouble throughout this movie. They even established 3 minutes into the film that if Kong leaves this facility, then Godzilla will come after him. The reasoning is because there can't be two alpha titans around. Now there's nothing wrong with the concept, but there is something wrong with the way they just dump this exposition on us with one line, and they just keep reiterating it, that if we take Kong outside, then Godzilla will come for him. It's quick and to the point, but it's also very lazy storytelling. I wouldn't have minded seeing them discover this little fact for themselves. It would have led to an interesting set of events in the film. Certainly more interesting than following the other human characters. Also, there was something very weird with how Godzilla's opening scene just stopped and cut to a news report. I would have liked it if they stayed in the scene for longer, because it did end up feeling a little choppily edited to me. Now I will say that out of all of the Godzilla movies, this one is definitely the most faithful to those crazy sequels that you'd get from Toho. A perfect example of this is when the bad guys create Mechagodzilla. They use one of the skeletal heads from the remains of Ghidorah from the last movie to harness his telekinetic abilities, and through this they are able to hardwire one of their people into controlling their big robot. Yeah, it's corny B-movie schlock, but you can't help but love that kind of craziness in a monster movie like this. So even though King Kong is in this movie, tonally this is definitely more of a Godzilla film. And I actually applaud the movie for going all in with the crazy concepts. This movie is also Godzilla and Kong's journey to the center of the earth. Yeah, I am not kidding. Kong gets there his way, and Godzilla tries to get there too. He goes digging. And you might think that sounds so mundane, but then Godzilla whips out his shovel.
This is badass!
Now the story for King Kong vs Godzilla was passable. It establishes a charmingly ridiculous plot and it provides a lot of B-movie laughs along the way. Although I will say that the opening credits were presented in a way which was very cinematic and operatic with its intense music, and then when they're over we cut to this low quality movie. I gotta admit, that abrupt shift in tone was very jarring. So one of the worst elements of the story for both of these movies is the story, and I don't really care about what's going on. The only thing I care about in the story is the rivalry between Godzilla and Kong. Everything else that's going on, I really couldn't care less. In the 1962 version, I care a little bit more about the story, but honestly not much more. And the main part I cared about, that being the personal rivalry between Godzilla and Kong, is practically non-existent in the 1962 film, whereas thankfully, it is in the 2021 movie, even though we don't see the origin of it. So the movie with the slightly superior story is Godzilla vs Kong. It's time to talk about the human characters for 2 monster movies. And if I'm being honest, out of all the movies in the Monsterverse, Godzilla vs Kong has the worst human characters. I really didn't like anything about them. Even characters that I thought were okay in the previous film were downright terrible in here. The only character that I thought was remotely interesting to watch was the little girl, as her scenes with Kong where the two are interacting with each other were nice. Besides that though, I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't even like Millie Bobby Brown's character. She was fine in the last movie, but as soon as I saw her here, it just felt like the movie was trying so hard to make her seem cool when really, she's not. I didn't like her attitude throughout the movie, and they didn't even attempt to give her or her father any scenes where they were trying to deal with the loss of her mother. I mean, you need to do something to make these returning characters feel warranted, but they just come off feeling like completely new characters that we have never seen before. And Kyle Chandler was shamelessly sidelined in this movie too. This is especially a missed opportunity when you take into account that he was in Peter Jackson's King Kong film. Having him witness this King Kong would have been interesting. But no, he should have been the one with his daughter, but instead we have Fire Fist here from Deadpool 2, and he is only here to be the bumbling idiot. He has nothing to contribute throughout the entire movie and is constantly being rudely dismissed by the other characters. His only contribution is bringing a car at the beginning of the movie, which Millie Bobby Brown takes from him, and spilling some coffee on a computer at the end of the movie. That's it. The same with the podcaster. He didn't need to be in this movie either, and all of his humor, as well as the humor for the rest of the human characters, fell flat. I mean, in the other movies, the characters at least felt like they were contributing something to the story, especially in Godzilla King of the Monsters, but here, they were completely useless. As for the characters in the 1962 film, they are serviceable. They're nothing great, and the acting is super corny, and intentionally so. Just look at the way the main character is calling out for his sister when Kong has her. Me and my brother were laughing like crazy when that happened, and at this point, more than before, you just can't take the situation seriously. It's just funny. And when these two come to Kong's island, they run into the natives, and this took a turn that I did not expect. The leader of this place starts out all strict, like he's gonna kill them for trespassing, then as soon as he is given a radio as a gift, he turns into this. And then they start handing out cigarettes and stuff, and it gets very on the nose funny. And I love when these two first think that the natives' god is thunder, and that they have nothing to worry about if they don't participate. And then they get scared shitless when they find out that it is King Kong. And then later on we get this weird as shit scene where the natives do this weird dance for Kong, and it just looks so dumb. They must have known that people are going to laugh at this. And I gotta say, the English subtitles can be very bizarrely translated sometimes, such as in this scene here. What are you driving at? You mean, what are you getting at? So the characters aren't good in either movies, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find the characters in the original movie to be quite funny and charming with their goofiness. So the movie with the superior characters is King Kong vs Godzilla. Now, Kong's entrance in the 1962 movie was alright, but what I really want to talk about is his appearance. And everyone is saying it, and it's true. He looks like roadkill. I mean, really, he looks terrible. What the hell happened when they made this suit? I mean, he can't even close his fists when he beats his chest. And if that wasn't enough, the costume is so terrible that his eyes are open, even when he is supposed to be asleep. I mean, he just looks so terrible. And look at Kong when they drop him. Now, Kong's appearance in the 2021 movie looks fantastic. Looking at the trailers, I thought he looked more CGI-ish than he did in Kong Skull Island, but in the final movie, I thought he looked great. He looks so detailed, he's enormous, and when they carry him with helicopters, it doesn't look silly and funny like it did in the 60s version. It actually looks perfectly fine here. The only criticism I have is that the water that flows on his body looks very obviously fake. I gotta say though, that as soon as this movie started off, I noticed that Kong was being too friendly towards the humans. King Kong can be one of the nicer monsters, but I feel like the human characters need to earn his trust and his generosity. And I can buy that he made a connection with this little girl, but I feel like a chunk of this movie is missing with regards to Kong and how he has gone from this very authoritative character in his own movie to this soft and overly kind and gentle animal that is now locked up in a facility. With that said, something felt very different about him at the beginning of this movie. It felt less like I was watching an angry CGI effect and was watching more of an actual character. And Kong being able to communicate via sign language I thought was an ingenious idea. It adds depth to the character in a way that he never had before, or at least that I know of. And the scene where he talks to the little girl and says that he's sad and wants to go home, that cemented him as the best character in this film, and for the first time, it actually made me feel for this version of Kong. And I started to root for him, even though going into this movie, I was Team Godzilla. You don't get any such character development for Kong in the 1963 movie. He is literally a walking dummy in that film. That's all he is. And as for Godzilla in both films, in the 1962 movie, much like Kong, he is a guy in a suit. And although his suit doesn't look great, it looked much better than King Kong's. And as always, watching him destroy stuff was cool, although his atomic breath looked really quite weak to me. And Godzilla in the 2021 movie looked really good, and he actually had something going on. His place in the world had been threatened, and there was a little story behind his motivations. Now granted, I don't really buy his newfound attitude, but I am willing to let it slide and just accept it for a monster movie, because at the very least, the movie did give him a somewhat understandable motivation. There was no such motivation in the 1962 film. He just shows up to wreak havoc, which is fine, but when compared to the slightly more involved motivation Godzilla has in the 2021 movie, the 1962 movie does feel lesser in comparison. And really, the visuals in this film were stunning, and the two monsters look absolutely fantastic. And he doesn't rapidly wave his arms about either. And if you were thinking, how can Kong defeat Godzilla seeing as he's much less powerful and less invincible? Rest assured, both movies are very aware of that, as they very clearly establish that Kong and Godzilla have very different power levels. And as you will see in the action segment, it's actually quite funny how they showcase that. So to me, the movie with the superior interpretations of King Kong and Godzilla, both with their personality and designs, is Godzilla vs. Kong. Okay, before we start this next segment, let me remind you, you asked for this. Now, I don't want to hear anything about this being an unfair comparison. So, now that we've established some boundaries, let's get to the next segment. Now, the 1962 movie has two battles between Godzilla and Kong, and when I say two battles, I mean that loosely. The first battle happens 1 hour and 2 minutes into the movie, and the second battle takes place 1 hour and 26 minutes into the movie. This is basically the last 10 minutes of the film. In comparison, their first battle in the 2021 movie happens 40 minutes in, and their second battle happens 1 hour and 23 minutes in, and both are substantially longer battles in the 2021 film. Going back to the 1962 movie, when Godzilla makes his grand entrance, it felt very underwhelming and cheap. Even for these movies, they could have made his entrance more built up and grand. And right after that, we see a bunch of obvious models for tanks. Although I gotta say though, the Godzilla suit looked decent in this scene, and the explosions looked really nice too. And that goes across the board. Anytime they use fire in this movie, it looks pretty good, and it provides some nice visual flair. I thought out of all of the models and miniatures though, the one with the train was actually really quite good. There's also a fight where Kong fights what, at first, just looked like a living turd, and then you find out that it's a giant octopus. But it starts out so dark that you could barely see it, and the fight itself was quite lame and so forgettable. Although it does make me wonder if they took that and put it in Kong Skull Island. Now, the first battle in King Kong vs. Godzilla was terrible. I don't even think you can call it a fight. They both hilariously roar at each other a bunch of times with atrocious lip syncing. They then wave their hands around at each other, and then admittedly, I do love this bit. I love that expression, by the way. Kong is like, well shit, I can't do that. Well, I can fire stuff too. And yeah, he throws one more rock and it hits Godzilla this time. After waving their arms around some more, Kong walks away, and that was our first epic battle. This is an encounter we're going to remember, isn't it? But for all the wrong reasons. Now, the first battle in the 2021 film takes place near the sea, and Kong actually loses his first battle with Godzilla, and Godzilla fights very dirty in their first battle, especially when he tries to drag Kong into the sea. I was genuinely afraid for Kong in this scene, as this movie does a very good job of showing just how these two monsters can kill each other. So this movie really doesn't hold back with the first battle between Godzilla and Kong, and I loved it. And as for the final battle, well, in the 1962 movie, I found it funny how Kong Kong was essentially scared of facing Godzilla. The humans make Kong fall asleep, and whilst he's sleeping, they drop him near Godzilla, and when he wakes up, he totally wimps out at the beginning of the fight. And this was a much better fight between the two monsters. Both of these guys are fighting in suits, and the attacks they throw at each other was so childish and petty at times. Kong tries throwing another rock at Godzilla, because it worked so well the last time, and Godzilla flings it back with his tail, and at one point, Kong falls down and knocks himself out. Truly a battle of wits. And again, we were laughing like crazy. And towards the end of the fight, it doesn't even look like they're fighting anymore. It just looks like they're hugging each other. And after that, it just looks like they are trying to see who can destroy this building first. Now, as for the massive final battle between Godzilla and Kong in the 2021 movie, it honestly felt like two big battles crammed into one. And then we even got a third battle as well, where a new player entered the ring. This battle started out as revenge for Kong as he wipes the floor with Godzilla, and I loved how Kong kept stopping Godzilla from using his atomic breath, and it showed more of a strategy on Kong's part. So in a way, this actually was a battle of wits, not just two monsters mindlessly punching each other. And I like how Kong tried to do his signature jawbreaker move on Godzilla, and Godzilla just used his beam. That is something that I said I wish I could see them do in my Godzilla vs Kong Skull Island video, and I was so glad that I got to see it here. And then after Kong wins using the power of Godzilla's own atomic breath against him, Godzilla gets back up for another round, and he beats the crap out of Kong, even resorting to tearing him up with his claws. And then after that, Mechagodzilla shows up and he shows Godzilla no mercy. I mean, really. He was getting beaten up so bad that it started to get funny. I mean, Mechagodzilla was beating him so non-stop that it started to look like Godzilla was getting bullied on the playground. And I would feel sorry for him if he wasn't being such a dick throughout the rest of the film. So I was enjoying watching him get his butt kicked by the bully on the playground. I mean, seriously, look at this and tell me this is not a heightened version of a bully smashing someone's head into multiple lockers. And there's even a part where Mechagodzilla grabs Godzilla and literally drags him through the dirt. I don't know what to say, it was hilarious. It's like a monster's version of a school bully. Although I was genuinely worried when Mechagodzilla was going to shoot his atomic breath into Godzilla's mouth. I was under the assumption that you just couldn't kill Godzilla in these movies, but as soon as Mechagodzilla opened up Godzilla's mouth, I was like, oh shit. And just at that moment, Kong came in and saved him, and even Godzilla was surprised to see him. And I loved watching the two team up. I never thought watching Godzilla and King Kong teaming up would be so cool, but they made it cool. And I especially love when Godzilla powers up Kong's axe, and then Kong is able to deliver the finishing blow. That was so awesome. Although I would have liked it better if Godzilla also managed to deliver a finishing blow too, and not just Kong. By the end of the movie, I can say that I have never seen Godzilla and Kong look as torn up as they were at the end of this film. You can just see in his exhausted movements that Kong doesn't want to fight anymore. And Godzilla was all worn out too. It was so hilarious to see them like this. So yeah, do I have to say any more? I will say in the 1962 movie's favour, I really liked watching the destruction of the city. Now yes, it's very obviously models and the movie makes no attempt at manipulating the scale of them with clever camera tricks, so it's always obvious that what you're watching is practical but not the slightest bit real. But that being said, watching these practical models get demolished and absolutely destroyed will never get old to me, and it's still a lot of fun here, even if it can get very silly at times. And watching the city get destroyed in the 2021 movie is CGI, but it had to be, and it's still so much fun to watch, especially when Godzilla gets bullied by the new kid in town and gets his head smashed and stomped on. That also never got old. So yeah, you all saw this coming. The movie with the superior action is Godzilla vs Kong. When you get down to it, both of these movies are exactly what you would expect given the time in which they were made. The 1962 film is a cheesy B-movie of the 60s, and the 2021 movie is a modern-day CGI fest in the best possible way. They both buy their time with their sorta story and their sorta characters just so they can eventually show you the two iconic monsters battling it out. They don't properly tell you who won the overall battle, both Godzilla and Kong win some and lose some, but it's pretty much shown that Godzilla would win against Kong, because Godzilla is pretty much invincible, whereas Kong is not, and he has a huge disadvantage in this way. So although Kong would put up a really good fight, he would ultimately be the one to lose in the end, and the movie makes that abundantly clear. And the same goes for the 1962 movie, although I gotta say, they just have that one battle at the end, they have a big fall, Kong swims back to his island, and that's it. But you know that if Kong survived, then Godzilla definitely survived. I didn't expect great characters from either of these movies, but in Godzilla vs Kong's case, I was still let down, as the characters they brought back are worse, and the new characters are the worst out of the entire monsterverse. But with that said, it delivered where it mattered the most. The action sequences are amazing. This is probably the first time I'm going to say this about modern movies, but I am so glad that they made this, as this is exactly the kind of Hollywood remake that you would want to see with up-to-date special effects. But that being said, although the action in this movie is a lot of fun, everything else just feels unnecessary, and like I said, it has some of the worst human stuff I have seen out of all the MonsterVerse films. And although both films are good B movies, they are not something that I would want to watch again, with the exception of the action sequences. It's time for the scores. King Kong vs Godzilla gets a 5 out of 10, and Godzilla vs Kong gets a 6. The action scenes and special effects get a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but everything else in the movie really does get more of a 3 or a 4, and for me, it all evens out to a 6 out of 10. One thing that Godzilla vs Kong has proven to me though, is that you can make one of these MonsterVerse movies where the main character is not the humans, it's the monsters. I really would like to see one of these movies completely take place from the monsters' point of view, as opposed to just seeing it from the humans' point of view, which is something that we have seen so many times, even in the Toho versions of these films. The closest we have gotten to seeing one of these movies from the monsters' point of view is Peter Jackson's King Kong, and I think it's about time we get another movie that does the same thing, but throughout the movie's runtime. That's a challenge that I'm throwing out to filmmakers out there. But yes, the superior movie is the 2021 film, and if the title sounds appealing to you, then I can highly recommend it. Thanks for watching another Versus video, guys. If you liked it, click that like and subscribe button. And also, I am now doing trailer reactions on my Patreon, as so many trailers are coming out that I don't have time to cover them in my normal video format. So this way, you'll get to hear all of my thoughts on the latest trailers, and I can still focus my main effort into producing my Versus videos. All you have to do is donate just $1 and you'll be able to see all of my trailer reactions, as well as other content that I post on Patreon. And your donations will really help in supporting my channel. My most recent trailer reaction is of the new Shang-Chi trailer, and I'm going to do the Conjuring 3 trailer very soon. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see all of you in the next Versus video. That music sounds vaguely familiar. Whatever it is, take care.